4 or 5 years ago, I heard there was a lot of news. 4 or 5 years ago, you would pick up the paper and you'd read about this heroin epidemic. It was beginning to get some traction and some awareness. I had just graduated from Northern Kentucky University. I was a video production major, and I was going around doing projects about everything. I just really loved doing video projects. I would interview people. I did projects on magic. I did projects on a local flea market. And when they talked about this heroin epidemic, I decided I'll do 2 public service announcements, something that they could put on television if they wanted to, put it on YouTube, and I'll do 2 public service announcements and, you know, do my thing. Well, if you're going to do a public service announcement, you have to interview people and you have to learn about the subject. You have to figure it out what it is that you're talking about. So I started attending meetings, and people would ask me, and I did not have any children who were addicts, no relatives who were addicts that I knew of at that time. And I would tell them, I'm a video maker, I'm going to do 2 public service announcements. And people, you know, they like that. So I go to a meeting, and it's parents, mostly mothers, of addicts, parents of addicts. Some have lost children, some have children in recovery, and some have children who are still in addiction. But these parents are talking. Very educational to sit down and listen to these people talk. But I wanted to be able to be intelligent about this public service announcement, so I said, let me ask the question. If you have a loved one who's in addiction, heroin addiction, how do you get them out of addiction and into recovery? Now, I was really proud of my question because I knew to use the word recovery, and I'm getting ready to solve all the world's problems, and I got my legal pad and I've got everything ready. And a lady said next to me, well, everything starts with detox. Everything starts with detox. So D-E-T-O-X, I wrote down detox. I said, what's next? And a person from across the room said, well, no, you got to get them into detox. And I underlined the word detox. I said, I got it. Detox. Get them into detox. And somebody said, no, you don't got it. There's a 6-month waiting list to get them into detox. And I thought I had the answers. I figured I was the smartest person in the room, right? And I said, well, tell them to go to the doctor. And they stopped me and they said, the doctor will tell you he doesn't do that. He doesn't do recovery. He doesn't do detox. He doesn't do addiction. And they'll farm you out to somebody else. I said, but when they have an overdose and they go to the emergency room, then they can get help. And they stopped me and they said, they keep them 3 hours and then tell them to leave. You got to get them in the detox. And I said, wait a minute. Are you telling me there's no plan? It was already being reported as epidemic proportions, okay? I said, you're telling me that when a person wants help, there's no plan to get them in the help, that they're told to wait 6 months? There's no plan? And a lady at the end of the row stuck her head around the corner. Her name's Kimberly Wright. I met her later. And she said, welcome to our world. At that time, Boone, Kenton, and Campbell County, the 3 of them together had probably, well, a couple years ago, they had over 300 people die of overdoses. So how many detox beds do they have? 300 overdoses. How many detox beds do they have? 11. 11? 11? People are, at that time we were losing 7 people a week. They have 11 detox beds? Welcome to our world. My interest over the next couple months as I sat down and talked to people, as I interviewed people who would later overdose, as I interviewed people who had gone to the hospital and been told they weren't bad enough, my mission changed from just make 2 public service announcements to researching and doing something. Didn't know what I could do, but to try to be a part of the solution of this problem. I decided I was going to start a Facebook page. And one of the ladies I interviewed was a mother up in Columbus, Ohio. And she had lost her son. And while I was interviewing her, she told me her son was her only child. He was supposed to start college. He overdosed. He died. And she said, he will never finish college. He will never graduate. He will never get married. And then she choked up and said, and I will never have a grandchild. And heroin doesn't care. Heroin doesn't care. I couldn't get her words, heroin doesn't care, out of my mind. So when I started the Facebook page, I named it, Heroin Doesn't Care. And I discovered that when you talk about this subject, that can be the answer. You know, they were young, heroin doesn't care. They were old, heroin doesn't care. They were rich, they were poor, they were well educated, they were high school dropouts. Heroin doesn't care. So we have to. And that's become my mission. We have to. It's common for me to be talking to parents who have lost a child or who are trying to get a loved one into recovery. I spend time on the phone, and I'm really not that busy as compared to a lot of other people who are doing a lot more than I am. But it's taken a while. I'm an advocate. I'm an advocate for recovery. And I try to get people to understand that, you know, as much about this. So people ask me, Ron, why do you do this? You don't have a child who's an addict. You're not an addict. Your loved ones aren't addicts. Why do you do this? My question is, how can you not? How can you pick up the newspaper, watch the television, hear how many people are dying from this, how many lives are being ruined? How can you not do something? In the state of Ohio, for every 100 addicts who make a phone call, they will get put on a waiting list. The waiting list is usually 6 months, which means after 6 months they take them off the list. Because that's why they call it a 6-month waiting list. But for every 100 who get on the waiting list, how many get into a detox bed? In the state of Ohio, it is 13.8. That comes right from the state. That's their statistic, which means 86% of the people who want to stop, not just addicts, but the people who have actually asked for help and got on a list, 86% will stop heroin when they die or go to jail. Because there's only 3 ways to stop heroin. Die of an overdose, go to jail, or complete successful rehab. And Ohio only has enough detox beds to handle 13.8% of those who want help. Please do not tell me they have to want help. They have to want it. I talked to a young lady at an event who came to the event hoping to get help. It was an awareness event, and she was crying and she wanted help. She wanted help. And I advised her, the first thing I said, well, have you tried to go to the local hospital? They told me I wasn't bad enough. What does not bad enough mean? I don't get that. What do you mean you're not bad enough? Well, she said, they told me I wasn't overdosing. And she said, so if I overdosed, you would help me. And they said, we'll keep you 3 hours and then you have to leave. Well, she's at an awareness event. She's come to the right place. There's 6 or 7 groups. And we got on the phone. This is on a Saturday, and we start making phone calls. Well, we know who to call in northern Kentucky. There are only 11 detox beds, and we called, and those 11 detox beds were filled. So we started calling people in Hamilton County, and we divided up the phone calls, and people were just calling different places. 15 minutes go by, and we haven't got her a room, and she's crying, but she's still determined that she wants to stop this. Half an hour goes by, and I told her, don't, hang in there, we're gonna find someplace. We're calling Lexington, we're calling Louisville, we're in northern Kentucky. We call as far away as Tennessee. Nobody has a room. Nobody has any room. We would have picked her, we would have taken her, put her in the car and driven her to Tennessee, but Tennessee didn't have room. So me and another gentleman went over to tell her that we're still trying, and we started looking, and she had given up. She had left. I never saw her again. I pray that she found someplace that could take her, because she wanted to stop, and there was no room. I have a friend named Tracy. Tracy found out her daughter was doing heroin, and started calling places to get her put into a detox facility. She started calling on January 28th. On February 14th, just a little more than 2 weeks later, her daughter died. Less than 3 weeks that she knew. She found out she was an addict. She started to try to get her help, and she called places every day, every day, every day, every day. 2 years ago, Tracy was at an event in Washington, and she had a sign, and the sign very simply said, "There was no bed, and now she's dead." You know, we have to become a part of the solution. We have to become a part of the solution. We have to understand that there are addicts out there who don't want to be addicts, and we have to help them. If a child had cancer and there was treatment, and we told the parents, the good news is there's treatment, but there's a 6-month waiting list. And then we told them, well, actually only 13.8 of the people who ever are diagnosed with this ever get into the treatment. We'd be marching in the streets, we'd be having protest rallies, we'd be demanding action. People were dying because there's not enough treatment. Believe me, there are enough addicts who want to stop, but they're dying because there's not enough treatment. We have to be part of the team. We have to become part of the solution. There was no bed, and now she's dead. Depending on who you talk to, there are 5 or 6 stages of recovery. There were 2 addiction doctors many years ago who started working with alcoholics. And at that time, people would try something new and see if it worked. Try something new and see if it worked. And you're always going to something else because you're not sure if it works or not. These 2 doctors decided that was a dumb way to try to approach this, because they had alcoholics. They had alcoholics who had a 20-year coin, a 10-year coin. They'd been successful. So they interviewed a few thousand alcoholics who had recovered, who had quit, and had not had a drink anywhere between 10 and 20 years. And they came up with 5 stages of recovery: pre-contemplative, contemplative, preparation, action, maintenance. Now, I've added one. Actually, a couple of doctors have talked about this, and I add it right between pre-contemplated and contemplated. I add interruption. Alcoholics used to call it hitting rock bottom. Pre-contemplated is another, it's a fancy word for denial. I don't have a problem. They have a problem. They have a problem. I don't have a drug problem. I don't have a drinking problem. I don't have an addiction problem. Look, folks, all of us have some kind of problem. And you'll never solve it until you face it. So pre-contemplated are people who are not even considering recovery. Interruption. They hit the brick wall. They hit rock bottom. Now, we can't wait for people to hit rock bottom in heroin because they overdose too soon. But they have an event in their life. They lose a job, lose their wife, get arrested, thrown in jail. Something happens that shakes them to their core, and they start to think. That's contemplation. They start to think, maybe I need help. Now, contemplation is what we would call acceptance, is not recovery. It just means you're thinking about recovery. Next is preparation. Preparation, you have decided, you have admitted, yes, I have a problem. What do I do? And in heroin addiction, opium addiction and heroin addiction, I advise you to go to, if you have no place else to go, join a support group on Facebook. In our area, we have Kentucky Parents Against Heroin Addiction. Nationally, there's something called the Addict's Mom. And these are private pages. There's Vivitrol treatment, which is also a private page. And you go to these Facebook support groups, and you ask to join, you join. Because it's a private group, your friends will not see what you post unless they're a member of the group. Okay? This gives you a chance to find people in your area. Look for Facebook groups in your area where you can just get in contact with people anonymously, ask questions. Then see if there's meetings in your area, because as a person trying to help someone, you have to take care of you. You have to take care of your health. You have to rest. You have to eat right. You have to be healthy so you can help them get healthy. But part of that is reaching out to other people, finding out what they've gone through, and fellowshipping with them and getting some camaraderie, some support, and some answers. That's the preparation where they start telling you, there's a recovery center here, there's a detox center here, you can try this, you can do this. I tell people, do not spend money. When you first start looking for information on the internet, you'll find a lot of really nice looking websites that make a lot of big promises. The most expensive recovery facilities might accidentally be good, some of them, but too many of them are just some place to grab people's money. I'm sorry. So ask friends, get some recommendations, find out who seems to have something that works. That's the preparation stage. Start preparing. Find out what you learn and find out what you can do. But that moves you to the action stage, because the preparation stage is still not recovery. Action. Action could, everything starts with detox. If they're an opium addict, a heroin addict, everything starts with detox. You got to get them in a detox. After that, you have to get them into a long-term program, either inpatient or outpatient, residential, non-residential. Learn what those mean. Your commitment is not 30 days. It is not 60 days. It is not 90 days. The action stage can well take 3 years, where you start with a detox, start with a sober living house, you start going to meetings, and then after about 3 years of sobriety, you can say, I'm working on my recovery. And then you come to maintenance. Maintenance, I go to church. Do you know what church people call maintenance? Church attendance. That's our maintenance. We attend church, we fellowship with other believers, we find a sense of community, we help one another, we pray for one another, we lift up one another up. You have to have that in your recovery. You need to be a part of groups. You need to work on that maintenance. And what is your maintenance involved? Well, that's going to depend upon the treatment program that you got involved with. I'm not going to try to second guess anything that your treatment is going to tell you. But contemplation is when, pre-contemplation, you don't even think you got a problem. You hit a wall, you've got the interruption, you wind up thinking about it. Maybe I have a problem, maybe I have a problem. When you admit it, then you start preparing. What I have seen is so many parents who love their children, once they get to that preparation stage, they think the kid's recovered. No. They get them in a treatment program. They get them through detox. They think they're recovered. No. They get them through a 30-day, 60-day, 90-day program. They think they're recovered. No. This action stage will take about 3 years. Going to meetings and relearning your life. And then once you've got a handle on this, you go into the maintenance, which is still attending the meetings occasionally, making sure that you're taking care of the stress in your life and learning how to deal with that. I get asked the question, how did we get here? How did we get started on this? And sometimes people who are professionals, like doctors, people who work for a hospital, they don't want to blame the medical community, and they don't want to blame insurance companies, and they don't want to blame physicians. Well, I'm not a part of any of that. So I'm going to give you my opinion, and I'm just going to lay the blame where I think it belongs. Back in the 90s, the medical community changed the way we look at pain. And they came up with what they call the fifth vital sign, where you go into a doctor's office or a hospital if you're in pain. They give you a little thing. It's got little smiley faces on it. 1 to 10, what level of pain are you in? And depending upon how you rate your own pain depends upon the medicine they give you. Well, you can't measure that. You can't measure pain. And asking a person to measure it themselves, you know, everybody thinks it's the worst pain they've ever had. So we started dispensing opium painkillers that were supposed to be addiction resistant. Well, the company that made that claim has been sued by several states and has admitted in court that they lied, that they just made up test results. To the point that in August of 2016, the Surgeon General wrote a letter to every prescriber in the country. If you were a doctor, a nurse practitioner, a dentist, or orthodontist, anyone who had the ability to write a prescription for an opium pain pill, you got a letter from the Surgeon General telling you, we have been handing this stuff out like candy. You have to scale back. And that was the first positive stop this action, was telling doctors, stop just handing out pain pills. More people die from opium pain pill prescription overdoses than heroin overdoses. They're all lumped together, but most of them are prescription. Every prescription pain pill someone uses and overdoses on was made right here in this country. They're not coming across the border in Mexico. They're not coming from China. They're made here. So we've got to stop that supply first. People were being given prescriptions, actually becoming addicted, and the doctors didn't know how to handle that. And some of them just kept taking the pill and eventually died of an overdose. Some of them became drug addicts and died of overdoses. But we're talking about people who had never even smoked pot, who had given a prescription by a doctor and got hooked on it, and then weren't helped because they still had that limited number of detox beds. So the first thing I think we need to look at is, and we have started this, stop just handing out opium pain pills for dental procedures and minor surgery. 2004, I had an appendix operation. They gave me 60 Oxycontin. I didn't need 60 Oxycontin. I took 4 or 5. So don't just hand out pain pills. And that's how we got started with this. That's how that started. I have a Facebook page, Heroin Doesn't Care. I have a website, heroindoesn'tcare.org. If you go to the Facebook page or the website, either one, you can find a link for an ebook. It's complimentary. There's no charge for this. We are not sending you a book. It's an ebook. It's an electronic book. It's a file that you can get. That there are 2. The first one is just my understanding of how we got here and my understanding of addiction in general. The second ebook is How to Quit Heroin. It's a guide for families and loved ones who have somebody in addiction. And it tries its best to take you step by step of what you should do and what you should not do, trying to help someone get off of heroin.